Okay, everyone, welcome to our next panel of the day. We're so excited to bring you Animating the Future. This is a very exciting session. And once again, we are with our good friends from the UK, as well as Jason Chen, who is here on behalf of BRON Digital. We saw a little bit of the amazing work in the live action space yesterday from our good friends, Adrian, Wootton, and of course, Helena. Mackenzie, who's doing such a wonderful job over there in everything they do. And now we're adding an exciting animation component to all of it, which we're so excited to talk about. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Good to be here.
Excellent.
Pleasure.
So, first, let's start off with an exciting show reel. This is the UK animation show reel. And then we'll go into a very brief presentation on the UK's animation strategy that will be led by Helena and Adrian. And then we will switch to a group discussion. But I did want to, and this is another part, very briefly, just kind of give everyone a little bit of background on all of our speakers. So I think what I'd like to do then is I'd like to start perhaps with our new speaker, Jason. And I'll bring him in first, and he can tell us a little bit about his work and his background, and obviously now everything he's doing with BRON Digital. So, Jason, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, my friend. As you know, when you're in the technology space, especially something that's live, it's almost like theater, but in the virtual world, right? Anything can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we've been having a good time so far the past sort of day and a half, and we're excited to continue the journey now with this panel. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in the animation and visual effects space, and then a little bit about what you're doing now with BRON.
Yeah, so a little bit of background about myself. I come from a live action on-set visual effects perspective. I was lucky enough to start at an early age on my first feature, which turned out to be Avatar. And that was my first dive into the virtual production space and using virtual production techniques, motion capture, and integrating it and shaping it for live action specific and hybrid feature films. After that, I spent some time continuing that journey on Real Steel with our mechanical robots directed by Sean Levy. Then I did a stint at Bad Robot working on Star Trek in the Darkness, and then a few Star Wars here and there. And then I did a long stint at Marvel, about 6 to 7 features there, and slowly after that, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to become the visual effects supervisor on Jojo Rabbit, and also the original What We Do in the Shadows pilot for FX now. And it just kind of skyrocketed us into this this virtual world. So getting back to basics, and then on a recent show, Those Who Wish Me Dead, that was released, it was how I met Aaron and Brenda, our CEO and president of BRON. We started speaking about the need for some change to be happening in the animation space. And we were sitting there on set, and that was at the tail end of when they were finishing out Willoughby's. And it was a fantastic project. So if you guys haven't seen Willoughby's, go check it out on Netflix. It's a great, great piece of film animation history too. So it's a lot of fun. But after speaking with them, it's we come from a live action background, and with the time that it usually takes a lot of animation films to be produced, we were able to produce tens, if not 20 different projects in the same span of 2 to 4 years. So what we did was I took them aside, and we started talking about game engine technology, how far it's come, and soon, and also remote workflows. So soon after that, I joined BRON as a consultant and started laying foundation from their Burnaby office into LA. And we started doing that unknowingly 6 months before the pandemic hit. So all that infrastructure was built out, and then as soon as the pandemic hit, we were actually good to go with all our remote workflows. Everyone was working from home. Everyone could adjust accordingly, and it was still challenging as we still, we're trucking through. But out of that very trying time came a lot of innovation, a lot of thinking outside the box, because we no longer had the beauty of going into an office with an infrastructure. So what we're doing at BRON specifically is we're using all the techniques of virtual production, from motion capture to virtual camera to live action and visual effects techniques, as well as animation, taking all the best elements of that and putting it into a remote workflow. So we are producing all of our content, all our high-end 3D animation, lighting in the Unreal Engine with our great collaborative partners from Epic Games. And we're in production on our second show, about to ramp up on our third, possibly fourth in the coming months. But we have a couple really exciting series that are coming out soon.
Wow. So yeah, you haven't been up to much. You haven't been doing a lot. It sounds like
We've been a little bit busy.
Of course. Yeah, that's really exciting. We had Brenda Gilbert on yesterday, and she had a great one-on-one conversation, just kind of overall in terms of everything that BRON has done in general, but specifically in this new animation and digital space. I think that sounds really, really exciting.
Yeah. It definitely is. And look, it's a new way of thinking. And one of the big things that we really wanted to incorporate, especially coming from such a strong live action background and on-set background, is that when the pandemic hit, there were almost a million cast and crew members that were out of work in Los Angeles County alone. So we tried to think about how can we use technology to bring in those artisans that know so much about the process, know so much about the art form, lighting, cameras, everything, and how do we fold them into the animation space. So on our show, we've made a real conscious effort paired with this real-time technology to bring in DPs from live action shows, bring in production designers, and not just any production designers or DPs, Academy nominated, winning, really, really talented artisans of their own right, and breaking down that barrier between what happens post and live action.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazingly exciting, and how you're kind of mixing all these worlds, right? From the live action to the animation to then the gaming space, and kind of creating this sort of robust world of content that can now be done, as you mentioned, remotely as well,
Exactly.
Which is super exciting. So I definitely want to continue this discussion in the roundtable, but I also wanted to introduce to our animation audience our friends from the UK. So I'm going to first bring in Helena to talk a little bit about her work in specifically within Film London and this new animation strategy. Hi, Helena.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do, Helena, and this is obviously a little bit of a different audience than yesterday, folks that are more into sort of animation and filmmaking and producing in that space. So if you want to talk about your role in Film London and how that relates now into the animation space as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the head of inward investment and business development at Film London. Excuse me, trust me to get a cough at the beginning. So the inward investment stuff is literally, what it says on the tin, which is basically to attract productions of all kind to come and make whatever it is you're making, come and make it in London. So that, of course, includes animation. It's not just film, television, and games. It very much includes animation. So Film London is the Mayor of London's sort of film and television agency, really, and screen agency. And we are the only screen agency in the UK that actually has a dedicated animation consultant that working with us. His name is Julian Scott. So we do take animation very, very seriously. And actually, as Jason sort of alluded to just then, weirdly, in the pandemic, one of the things the pandemic did allow people to do was to actually take stock and actually breathe for a second and not be running at 100 miles an hour because they couldn't run anywhere because we weren't allowed out. And so it's just kind of like, so we took time to think about some of the stuff that we've never really had the time to do before. So we took time to think about our animation strategy and the work that we do within animation, internally and externally. And it was a very good opportunity to actually write a strategy that hadn't been looked at for probably 6 or 7 years. So myself and Julian knuckled down, and we came up with a new strategy, which I think which we will come to as part of the presentation that we're giving. But it's very exciting, and it kind of gives us a proper pathway now forward. And it's not only about production attraction on that front. It's really about a much more holistic way of how Film London is working within the animation industry, be it film, television, in whatever way. We also have a games. We have Games London, so it feeds into our games work and everything as well. So it's a much more holistic approach. There's lots of exciting things which we can talk about towards the end of our presentation.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Helena. And I am now going to bring in, obviously, your colleague at Film London and the BFC, Adrian. Hello, Adrian. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, JL. Nice to be here again for day 2 of the MMFM, and nice to hear Helena speaking. But also, real shout out to Jason, because we're big fans of BRON in the UK. We've done various collaborations. BRON has obviously got offices in the UK. We've done things taking people out to BRON, so we're huge fans of them, and it's nice to have them as kind of collaborators, as well as, of course, our partnership with you. And it's great to be talking about animation, something we're very passionate and proud of our relationship with. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And obviously, I have to also say that, it was because of your office and Helena and Adrian that BRON came into the MMFM family as well. So I'm glad that we're all connecting each other, especially since, we're talking a lot about this interesting field of animation and how things can be done remotely and how we can kind of connect the world through this space, right? So just tell our animation audience a little bit about your specific work within the framework of Film London, the BFC, and how that kind of relates to animation very briefly before we get into your presentation.
Sure. Well, sort of picking up what Helena said, I mean, essentially, we are involved in every aspect of, if you like, of the screen industries, exhibition, distribution, as well as talent development. And it's interesting because what Jason touched on before is absolutely right. We recognize very much the way in which there's skills convergence, there's technology convergence, there's creative convergence going on between film, television, animation, and games. And if you like, Film London, if it's got anything to do with the screen industries, we have some kind of relationship with it. We're there to support it. We're there to promote it. We're there to encourage more people to work with us here in London and around the UK generally, with my British Film Commission hat on. And we have got a particular focus in 2021 around animation, because we think there's some incredibly exciting, talented companies and artists, and because it is so much at the cutting edge. And as Jason said, I mean, animation and games really had a different relationship to the pandemic than film and television production. We had to kind of reinvent things for film and television production in terms of procedures. Games and animation had to do some reinvention, but that was about remote working and protocols. It wasn't about necessarily changing the actual way people worked. And animation and games, to a certain extent, thrived during the pandemic because they were able to adapt so quickly.
Right.
And so I think it's a really exciting time for, certainly for UK animation. I'll talk about that in a second, but it's also a really exciting time for global animation. And we're very, as I'll show, we're very committed to that. And there's some fantastic work, some fantastic people, and we're just keen to connect them with a wide range of partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very well said, Adrian. And so this is all very exciting, and we want to get into this, but I obviously we wanted to sort of set up and frame the conversation with first your new UK animation show reel, followed by a short PowerPoint presentation that you and Helena will go over, and then we'll end it with a roundtable and perhaps some Q&A. So let's just go ahead now, and what I'd like to do is show the UK animation show reel, and then we'll be back with the presentation by Adrian and Helena, but let's just go with the reel.
This is London. Oh, Mr. Gruber, it's wonderful.
do your amazing ideas come from?
Let's get painting! Let's talk business.
My voice-activated device. This is perfect.
Well, that was excellent. So thank you so much. So now you can hear my voice, and you can also hear Adrian and Helena as well. So
Great.
yeah.
So
Welcome back.
there you have. Thank you. Our modest showreel, and we'll rattle on through this this slide deck. So obviously that's me. So if we carry on now to the next main slide, basically what we've got here is a few slides which I won't dwell on too long, but just to set the scene from the UK's perspective. For those of you that don't know, the importance of animation to the UK kind of, London, the UK screen economy. It's a big business. It's a developing business. We've had a lot of success over the last 5 years, as these figures say. I mean, 10 billion for the UK economy, 13.7 for the UK as a whole. That's not, small change. And that is, within the context of how film and television production in the UK, just like, everywhere around the world until the pandemic hit, the global demand for content commissioning, and that includes animation, is just going up and up and up and up, because basically all of those people out there, including the people on this event, are not consuming less. They're consuming more and more, and they want more and more. And that includes not just adults, but families and children, which obviously is a big part of animation, not exclusively, but it's a significant part. And if you look at these figures, they're very serious. They represent a lot of jobs. They represent a big economic importance and to the UK. And it's because of this, and because of the global demand, and because of actually also rising back from the pandemic and promoting economic recovery, that we really wanted to kind of seize the day with film and television generally, but with animation in particular, and a special focus this year. So if you go on to the next slide, JL, the second golden age, well, this is pretty obvious. There's more content being commissioned than ever. What's really interesting is that, the traditional providers, the traditional commissioners, like Disney, are still very much up there. But as I'm sure Jason will comment, Netflix is, for example, investing heavily in animation. Other companies are investing heavily in animation. You heard what Jason was saying about BRON's doing itself. There's an awful lot of competition out there, but there's an awful lot of opportunity out there in the global market. And actually our job at Film London, the British Film Commission, is to see whether we can harness and develop and sustain our share by building bigger partnerships, building new relationships, and grabbing those opportunities. That's why we've developed an animation strategy, which I'll let my colleague Helena talk about in a bit more granular detail. That's why also with the British Film Commission has got a campaign which also doesn't just focus on animation in terms of content commissioning for whether it's children, families or adults, but also the relationship with visual effects, which Jason already talked about in terms of his own work. We have a lot of absolutely amazing visual effects animators within the big VFX houses, the double negs, the Oscar-winning double negatives and frame stores of this world. And that's one of the reasons that actually Disney and co, another reason they come here is that they want to actually access the talent of particularly skilled artisans who work within the big visual effects houses as well as the animation companies. So it's a big area. And fun facts onto the next slide, please. Did you know? I mean, it's incredible. The 490 million pounds and 370 million, which is spent directly in London, And this is for production only and doesn't cover the long tail of animation's commercial value, because obviously that's the other thing about animation. It's also about developing IP, developing long-term series. When we think about what Aardman's done, that's in Bristol, but, children's series like Peppa Pig, which has become a colossal brand as well as a television's children's show. That's obviously image there from Peppa Pig. 1 billion from merchandising every year since 2019. That is extraordinary. That's the power of animation, the value of animation. It's not just about the commissioning by Netflix or Disney, not commissioning by broadcast or satellite, but it's also if you create characters that have an intrinsic value and you can build that IP, you've got an extraordinary opportunity. And certainly we've seen some very big areas there. Going on to specifically London's animation sector per se, we're the second biggest animation producer in Europe after France, and we actually have a kind of a relationship with France because obviously big companies like Studio Canal that produce Paddington, which of course has got a lot of animation and visual effects in it. It's financed out of France, but actually made in the UK by British talent and British producers. So that's just an example of a big feature film that uses animation and live action combined. And because of all this opportunity, because of all this this work, the jobs, because of the creative talent, because of the demand, the global demand, we decided that we really had to provide more of a focus, more of an emphasis. And that's where Helena and my colleague Helena and our animation consultant came in terms of turning to the key stakeholders and saying, okay, what more can we do for animation? What more can we do to outreach for animation? Asking these key questions and looking at the next slide, looking at the way in which animation is set up in the UK, the amount that we're producing. And Helena's already mentioned our dedicated animation consultant. And if you go on to the next slide, these are just, these are stats and figures, but it just shows the diversity of the work that's going on. On the previous slide, you saw 10 animation features, 35 television series in production. Then you've got 60 animation studios and producers, the different types of business that we've got, full service studios, top and tail studios, executive producers doing things. And then if you look at employment on the next slide, that's a lot of people in London, 2,500 people, feature animation, 1,500 in series animation. And the fact from our point of view, we have to focus on animation is also about recruitment. It's also about training to make sure that we aren't impacted by the effects of the exit from the EU and developing new programs. And we're looking at an overall skills strategy for London right now with the Mayor of London, which incorporates not just film and television, but incorporates animation and games at its core, and that's a really important part of it. And now we're going to the red slides, and I'm going to hand over to Helena to talk in a bit more detail about what our animation strategy actually found and what it's doing now. Helena.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'm not about to go into every single line of the tax credit, but these yellow headlines here are the things that are the main points that we took out from the strategy. And with the tax credit, everyone's got a tax credit, and in some ways, you might think that the UK tax credit is not as competitive with other territories within animation who are offering 40% plus, particularly in Canada and in other Far Eastern territories. So the headline for the British the tax credit is 25%, but the devil is in the detail. And what British film tax credit gives you is we call it the gift that keeps on giving. There's a lot more to it. The back end of it is super exciting, and it's very beneficial to anyone who uses it. The problem is that it sort of gets a bit lost. Everyone thinks of it as a film tax credit, but animation is included within this. So it's something that we want to do to make sure that people understand that the UK tax credit does include animation. So and please. I'm going to caveat everything with, at the end of this, please come and talk to us about it, because we can go into more detail. So tax credits is something that's really important to us, and we want to make sure that you know about that. the sort of production and IP development. So what we have here is like, we do have some funds that you can apply to via the British Film Institute. And thank you. And we have a young audience content fund, for instance, which is mainly for television. But again, the BFI, the British Film Institute, if you fit the right criteria, you can get feature film funding, including animation, from the International Fund. And also there's a new Global Screen Fund, which was just launched recently, which is a bit of a pilot at the moment. If that's successful, then there should be more funding coming from that. And in terms of sort of IP support and development, we ourselves at Film London, we have an IP market, which is quite new. We've been doing it for 2 years, and we will deliver the 3rd edition in February. It's called Upstream, and that is, we are looking at early stage IP for projects that can be adapted and developed into film or television. So it might be, from an animation point of view, a character, or you may have a web series, or you may have, you know, it's just something that is animated that you feel, with the right company involved and the right partners in the UK, could become film or television. So we'd definitely like to hear from you if you have something like that. And we also have the production finance market, which I run every year in October. We're about to do it in a couple of weeks' time. You'd be too late for this year, but the call for application goes out in May, every May, and we are definitely looking for animated features, early stage, again, not quite IP stage, but that have got some finance attached. And it's a 2-day event with one-to-one meetings with financiers. So that's how we can help there. Our training, skills and diversity, this came very high up on our list. You know, inclusion and diversity is a big thing for us. It's at the heart of what we do. And we, as Adrian mentioned, we have a huge skills bid, which is going into the Mayor of London, which will absolutely include animation and train and skill up more people to work within the industry. And within that, we specifically focused on a disability scheme, which again came out of the pandemic. And it's again about remote working, thinking that actually if you identify as disabled and you are a wheelchair user, perhaps getting to work is an issue. And so therefore you're able to work from home much more easily these days, and particularly within the animation industry. So we are running specific schemes on disability, and to make the disability workforce stronger within the animation industry. And we kicked that off last Thursday, actually. Infrastructure and support is just like, basically we are all about collaboration and partnership. So if you have something that you think could be a co-production with the UK, please come and talk to us. We are here to help you, support you, and advise on how you can work with us in London and with the UK as well. And lastly, on this sort of celebration of London's animation success, it's like one of the things that I'm very keen to do, and we are very keen to do, is to make sure that the word animation is in our general daily parlance. And it's just like, people talk about film and television all the time. I want people to be saying film and television and animation, and that it stands alone. It has a right to stand alone, and we want to celebrate its success and all the joy it brings us. So let's have a look at the next slide, please, JL. And then what we did was we had a look, we feel that you can't do anything externally until you take a good look at yourself internally first. So we did that, and we made sure, or we are in the process of making sure that all the departments within Film London are not working in a sort of silo mentality when it comes to animation. So we want to make sure that everything that we do is cohesive and working together internally to be able to strengthen our voice within the animation industry. So we're definitely making sure that our new talent and our Artist Move and Image network, we're all working together to deliver a great story for animation generally. And I think probably the next slide, please. Then Of course, we want to increase our inward investment and everything, and we want people to use the tax credit. And we want to work in partnership with lots of people. And one of the things that we do very well, I have to say, is what we call familiarization trips or fam trips. And in fact, this is when we usually bring people into London for a few days, and we, give them the old jazz hands, and we show them what London can do for them, and they leave us at the end of the week having had their minds changed and blown, I always say. So we do this for animation. But a couple of years ago, we did an outbound one, and actually BRON was very much included actually in our outbound, and because we went to Vancouver and we took some animation executives over to Vancouver, and much talk was had, but much business was done. And it's one of the most successful trips we've done with UK animation companies and with Canadian and Vancouver-based animation companies. So what we'd like to do is replicate that and do something, similar along those lines. And we are going to do that next year in February in Miami with our friends at Comicol and MMFM. And we are going to be identifying some UK animation executives who will already be in Miami anyway for Kids Screen, and then they will come and spend some time with one-to-one meetings, studio visits, and basically we're going to be encouraging, nurturing, and developing exchange of ideas and talent and business between Miami and London next year in February. And that's our exciting news.
And if I can just chip in, Jael, because I think Helena's you really summarised things really well there. But to finish, obviously, from my point of view, this is a great extension of our animation strategy, and it's also wonderful that it continues and extends and enriches the partnership that we've developed with you and Patty and John on the Miami film and media market, and you being our key partner to take this forward. It's going to be great to bring animators to Miami, animation executives to Miami, to be in Kids Screen, but also to be involved with you and your initiatives next February. And as the borders have just opened from November, we're really excited about the fact that we'll be able to be there with you in person with our special group of creatives.
Well, speaking of being with us in person, let's get back to the conversation here. But that was a great presentation. So thank you all. And thank you so much for doing such a great job of encapsulating the world of not only UK animation, but this strategy that seems to be a global one now. So it's like, we have the streaming wars, and now I think it's the animation wars, maybe the race to see who's the best animation country or region or company in the case of BRON that can do this such an important work, as you guys mentioned, but also something unique in the sense that something that none of us thought we would experience last year, this idea that we had to work remotely all of a sudden, right, for so much time. So talk a little bit about sort of, some of the more practical things that have to happen in order for all this to work, from a logistical or production standpoint. Jason, if you want to start, and we can also kick it off to the other panelists.
Well, I just think that to be quite blunt, I feel like gone are the days of traditional office infrastructure. Yes, there is extreme value in having face-to-face relationships with your artists. But the past year, if that taught us anything, that is that we can now be very selective on the talent we go out to and work with people from all across the world. And it's because of that global community that we are starting to nurture for projects is how you get the better quality animated projects, because you have different perspectives from around the world, which is very, very amazing. And I think that's what, the UK in general over the past years, just looking at your reels of from Lion King to Paddington, that was the best thing about it was, it was this real melting pot of different experiences. And that was what really elevated the kind of animation that, and the talent pools that were, made the UK a go-to destination for animation and for visual effects as a whole too. So, it's super important to us to make sure that we have a global presence. It's, we have so many projects that are coming up, but, it's important that we don't get stuck into that old mentality of, okay, we need to fit this square peg in a round hole consistently. I think the basics and the fundamentals of a lot of this are, let's not just be confined to our zip code and our area. Let's look outwards. And, that's where, the UK talent pool is so important to us as well, for expansion in the future. And just, with all these exciting projects coming down the line, and the knowledge that it needs to be shared amongst us as a whole too. It's
Right.
It's definitely going to be the way of the future.
No, it absolutely is. And it's such an interesting point that was made about also kind of training and expanding the workforce and giving opportunities. Helena, you mentioned that in your presentation. That was so interesting, particularly disabled, which is something that ordinarily we unfortunately we haven't thought about enough. And It was just, coincidentally, we had a diversity panel yesterday where we talked specifically about that.
Oh, okay. It's just, it's when the pandemic happened and everyone had to sort of start working remotely. One of the, as Adrian mentioned, there were some changes that had to be made within the animation industry, mainly for security and access and that kind of stuff, for people to be able to work from home and for everyone to feel safe and secure with the work that was going on within everyone's bedrooms and kitchens and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what made me think, well, if you don't have to have the in terms of anyone in a wheelchair or who has mobility issues, if you don't have to go through that commute every day, then that surely is quite an opportunity for you to be working in animation, and also not necessarily as a creative, but I mean, there's office work as well within any studio. You still need the admin support. So, but even if you do go into an office, there's a lot of sort of what's called reasonable adjustments that a company is going to make in order to be able to have a strong disabled workforce, and they are really doable. They are not expensive, and we can all work harder to make that happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely right.
Adrian? Just chipping in, Jen. It's interesting you mentioned the diversity panel you had yesterday. I mean, this is very much part, and I mentioned it in the panel we did yesterday, is that this is very much part of a kind of core element of the work of Filmland and the British Film Commission, which is sustainability as a whole, not just environmental sustainability, but social sustainability. We all have a responsibility to diversify, to make our workforce more inclusive, and actually remote working, the technologies that are available to us, allows us to do that much more effectively and easily than it might have done. And certainly, disability is a significant element that we're looking at in the prison animation. But I also have mentioned our equal access network structure, which has thousands of diverse young people from across the communities of London that we're placing in jobs in film, television, animation and games, and working with a whole variety of employers, including a number of key animation companies in London. And that's a real part of this animation strategy and our general strategy for screen industries going forward, because, frankly, we want a younger, more diverse, more exciting, more energized, youthful, and workforce that frankly doesn't look like me.
Right.
And that's what's really important for the future of certainly the UK. But I think this is a global issue, and an issue where again we can have partnership. We have really exciting conversations with our friends, from international companies like BRON, who are working in the UK about what they can do, how they can work with us on placements and work placements, and the big companies and the smaller companies are all engaged by wanting to evolve and change and offer new opportunity. And with the work that's out there, it's entirely possible.
Yeah, and it seems very interesting timing for all this, especially when something like this can expand the workforce, and in terms of getting the younger folks, sort of trained and educated on it. Are you doing anything in terms of working with the universities or the film schools around the UK in particular to make sure that the workforce is being trained properly to enter this new field?
Yeah, well, it's something that Helena and I are doing a lot of work on, actually. And right now, we're in the final stages of submitting a large proposal, which was requested by the Mayor of London, who asked us to join up film, television, animation and games to come forward with a pan-London screen skills strategy that would harness, and work with young people. And we've got the majority of the key universities of London and some outside London. We've got a whole range of the different employers, and we have all the further education college providers all coming together. And it was no mean feat to get them under the same tent, I can tell you. But they have come together because it was a very simple proposition I made to them, and I made to the Mayor of London, which was to say, if we can bring you one proposition that unites London, this huge city, and we can give you a coherent pipeline where we can reach out, link industry to the trainers, so that the trainers are doing things, and the higher education institutions are doing things that industry wants, not what they want, what industry needs. And we can therefore help train and skill up young people who really can go and work inside industry and be supported to work inside industry. There are thousands and thousands of jobs out there, and more and more and more jobs coming down the pipeline over the next 5 years. So it's a bit of a win-win, no-brainer to do it. But, it has had to require some changing of attitudes and pushing people to say, either you want this opportunity, there's all this opportunity for young people, we can change the lives of young people for a generation here if we do the right things. And I know that that's not just, this is not just the UK, but I know in the United States, and I know in Canada, I know in Europe, there's a general feeling that film, television, animation, and games has this opportunity. And all the jobs, Jason was talking about virtual production and the relationship with gaming. There's a whole slew of new jobs that we haven't even properly characterized yet that's coming out for virtual production. There's a whole new generation of people we need that we haven't even kind of exactly identified what all those jobs are yet.
Right.
And to be honest, in this new world, this virtual production space, this Unreal, this Epic Games space, to add to what you were saying, Adrian, you hit it right on the head. It's, everyone is trying to learn these new techniques. Everyone is starting from scratch. So even visual effects supervisors that have been around for 30, 40 years that worked on the original Star Wars, guess what? Everyone is reset right now. So now is the opportunity where everyone's on the same level playing field, that we can learn together, build together, use the lessons from the past and integrate them for the lessons for the future, and also preserve the art form of filmmaking and animation so that future generations, the next generation of filmmaker, not just VFX artists, not just animators, the actual filmmaker, they're prepared and equipped with the knowledge of the past so that we can be prepared. And as you guys have probably seen too, is that who knows, that one animator that sticks through and just delivers all the shots and has that special stuff will be the next Pixar animator or the next feature, and this is where we have a really fantastic opportunity to share knowledge and make sure that this next generation has all the tools and the assets that they need. And that kind of ties into, a lot of what Epic Games have been doing. One of the biggest, I think, which is not really publicly known, Unreal Engine didn't used to always be free. And it was, I think, a couple versions back where they finally announced that this is free to anyone who has a computer, anyone who can download it, who has a graphics card. That was huge. It was a huge way to bring everybody on the same playing field. And now it's just, there's so many education opportunities out there. And we heavily lean in on that as well, because right now everyone's on the same wave kind of moving forward and in this unknown territory. It's imperative that we share the knowledge, preserve the knowledge from our filmmaking live action folks for the future, so that visual narrative gets preserved, but then also helps the next generation really have a cohesive a vision for the future too.
Wow. Well, I'm super excited now. And if I wasn't before, like this, everything you're talking about from, all the new opportunities, the partnerships between agencies like Film London, private companies like BRON, local governments, all kind of getting involved and kind of shaping the future around this content creation space of which animation is so important, I think is super exciting.
I think you're right. Helena might want to come in here, but the thing is, I think this is, back, a long, long time ago, a UK Prime Minister, in the cusp of the 50s and 60s, talked about technology and the white heat of technology. I think we're in that white heat now with content creation for screen, big and small. I think we are at a point where, as a global industry, we are dynamic and creative and innovative in a way that very, very few other traditional industries are. And we offer opportunities for young people that very, very few industries are. And certainly in the UK, and I know that's true of Canada, I know that's true of the US, people are looking at this and going, you know what, we can't just regard them as a Cinderella anymore. This isn't just, they're not just glamorous people that swan in and out, shoot a few things and then disappear. They're people that are building communities and more people are working in those communities. They're people that, these are fantastic long-term job opportunities and careers. They're jobs that are not going to be exercised by automation, like car manufacturing or other kinds of traditional manufacture. These have long-term futures, and they're exciting jobs. That's the other thing, and we have an opportunity to all work on them together.
But I think also, I'm sure we can all remember the days when, you say to your parents, I'm gonna go work in the entertainment industry. I want to work in film, television. I want to work in animation, and all they want you to do is get a proper job, right? They just when are you going to grow up and get a proper job? And it's just kind of like, these are proper jobs. These are properly proper jobs, and not only are they interesting and fun and everything, but they are contributing to each of our economies in our various territories that we might live in and everything, but they contribute to the community and everything as well. So, there are jobs within animation and film and television production too that say, we need everybody from, security and admin staff or what have you through to the creatives as well. So, they really can help lots of young people and returners, people that are coming back into the industry after being away for quite a long time. And of course, technology's changed so much, so they need to be skilled up again as well. So it's exciting from that age group as well.
Oh yeah, very well said. Absolutely, Helena. Yeah, it's like reminds me of a quote Jim Carrey said. He said, "You can fail at doing what you hate, so you might as well try doing what you love." Right?
I think that's a brilliant quote. And the other thing is that because of the way in which production, and we talked about remote production, it doesn't have to be entirely based on the traditional. London is a fantastic content hub. So is Los Angeles. So is Vancouver. But also people can work remotely. They can be in virtual production and they can live kind of almost anywhere. That's the extraordinary thing. And therefore it'll create employment opportunities in different parts of different territories where they don't have to necessarily be adjacent to a studio or adjacent to a gigantic technology complex. And we're certainly finding this in the UK, is that London acts as a hub with spokes, and there's all this terrific work going on in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland and the rest of England. And that's, again, there's an economic change to communities where these things, and we look at London, East London was a black spot in terms of employment because of the removal of the car industry. We've now got these gigantic studios being built there and a whole range of new businesses coming in, which will change the economy. And it won't be from a traditional industry. It'll be because of creative industries changing the economy of London and balancing the economy of London. And that's why the Mayor of London and our politicians are taking this seriously, because they see it in pounds, shillings and pence and jobs. That's why.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well said. And so I know we only have a few minutes left, and I have a stream of questions just kind of pouring in from our audience. So I want to get them involved, if you guys don't mind, for a few questions from our virtual attendees here. So I'm just going to go down the list here. So Joe asks, given the change we have seen, what would the panelists say is the best approach for moving forward with an original animation feature script? This coming from a screenwriter.
I think that must be that Jason ought to take that one.
Well, honestly, I think, at the end of the day, what we're looking for at BRON is really looking at our background and the films that we love to kind of embrace and look into is, I would say, prepare your script really, really go through with a fine-tooth comb and be fearless about cutting things and not precious. But make sure that when you present your script and when you set a pitch meeting, that you have all your creative in mind. So come prepared is the best thing and best advice that I would give. Is that come in with a lookbook, come in with your dream cast, even though however unobtainable, because to be honest, maybe you never know. The worst thing, my motto is the worst thing that people can say is no, but you never know until you ask. So I would say if you want to start, pitching a lot of ideas and everything, just come in prepared. Come in with a very cohesive pack, list of talent that you would love to attach. Some of the people, a smaller, a breakdown in budget, because at the end of the day, it shows, that kind of preparedness is what we look for, and it shows that you are passionate about your project. And a lot of people, to be honest, and I'm going to be very blunt right now, just expect the one process and then we're good to go, and then everyone will take it for them and everyone will do the work. No, we want to show that our filmmakers and the artisans are so passionate about what they do that they will live and breathe their project. So be passionate about your project, put everything that's in your brain on a piece of paper, in a document, in a lookbook, and that's the best way to do it. It'll give you the highest chance of success for the future.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
If and when, rather than if, when we all start traveling again and going to festivals and markets and that kind of stuff, is go to them and go to everything that you possibly can and do that networking and read about people, and so that you can mention them in a conversation, so that, it isn't just about your project, actually, it's about you being part of the industry and understanding and knowing people. So when if you are then hopefully pitching your project, you can throw in some comments or some proper sort of industrial information which shows that you're in the industry as well as just somebody with a project.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was just going to say, as a quick follow-up to that, so how far advanced in terms of this pitch from a technological standpoint? So this screenwriter already say, I'm looking to use this particular technology. Do I want something a bit more traditional? Does it have to look like South Park, or does it want to have another kind of feel like the Willoughbys or any other
style? My rule of thumb is that technology should never drive the creative. Once there's a good idea, first and foremost, once those words are on the page and you have an idea of what you want it to look like in your brain, the technology should fall in place. Like that, coming back to that, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. That's the beauty about the industry, is that we get to reset every single time we do it with a new script. So I would just say, don't focus so much on the technology at the point, but focus on the visual medium and how you want to convey your idea to your audience.
Yeah, well said. No, absolutely. So just a couple more questions. We have a couple more minutes here. This is a similar question from Rita. What is your observation and input for animation project screenplay versus regular script? I think the idea is, if you have a screenplay or an idea story that you've been trying to get out as a live action, does it make sense to try to see if it would work as an animation?
For me, and feel free to jump in, Adrian and Helena as well. I think that it's always a good exercise, regardless. Think about it in multiple forms, because the industry, the visual medium's changing, everything's changing all the time. So I would say it's actually a good writing exercise to reimagine it as a 180-degree different approach, because you may find some narrative pitfalls or anything. But ultimately, I feel like a story is a story. I think you could tell the same story if you wanted to with Toy Story in a live action sense. They would still have the same feel in terms of the story. So focus on the story.
I think that's great advice, and I think that certainly, in terms of upstream that Helena talked about before, in terms of the IP event, we encourage people to submit ideas that are fantastically strong ideas when it's not necessarily clear whether it's going to be a television series. It could be a film, or it could be a web series, or it could be an animated project. So I think it is about the strength of the story. I was just I had the pleasure of talking to the Bond producers earlier today, and Michael Wilson said, from the Bond point of view, and this, I'm quoting, he said, he said for him, it was all about making the story as complex and as rich as possible and the plot very simple. And I thought that was a brilliant distinction between the articulation of the narrative and what the story world was. And that's how they think about the Bond movies. And I thought that was a very good analogy.
No, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have let's see here. Similar question from Alfredo. We don't have to answer it again, but yeah, the idea that if the main character is a child, does it work better as an animation? I think we just covered that. So, it's whatever works for the story. Kevin, who has an animation production company that's done some award-winning work here locally, he wants to know how he can start to partner with the UK in terms of potential animation co-productions.
I think talk to us, basically. Come and talk to Helena and Julian. I mean, we have there's the film tax credit if it's an animated feature film, but we also have the animation television tax credit for television animation, and you can also use the children's television tax credit. So there's three tax credit options that you can work in. And what we do with people who are serious about working with the UK is that obviously our job is to try and do a bit of matchmaking. And obviously we know all the animation companies in London and across the UK. And between Helena and Julian, if there's an appropriate project that we think really might have some opportunity, then we'll obviously do our best to introduce you to people that.
Yeah, and we're going to be, maybe you can be part of our, trip that when we bring out our animation executives in February. And we'd love to be able to set up one-to-one meetings with you and that kind of stuff. And anybody else who's out there that's in Miami that wants to be part of this,
very good point.
Speak to JL.
Well, actually, I was going to say that's actually a great way to end the panel as a to-be continued.
It is. We'll be back live in February.
And
we were saying we'll get Jason down as well.
Jason, you gotta come down.
Great.
Yeah,
we'll have more projects to show as well.
Yes.
Great.
So, yes.
We're gonna have so much fun.
Yes, like Sancho said, we have to leave on a high, and I think that was a great high to leave on. But thank all of you for taking your time and talents and contributing to the MMFM virtual conference this year.
Thank you very much, JL. A pleasure as always. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Lovely to see you, Jason. Thanks, Helena. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Patty says hello as well. We'll see you very soon in Miami.
Yeah, look forward to being there. Bye.
Great. And for the rest of the audience, we will be back at the top of the hour at 2 p.m. Eastern time for Feeling Sentient. That's going to be a great session with our friends from LA as well. A very exciting production company doing some interesting things. And so definitely stay tuned. 2:00, we will be back, bring more questions, bring more energy. We're halfway there. This is MMFM 11. So stay tuned.